The US has confirmed that a second round of talks between Lebanon and Israel will take place on Thursday. Lebanon's fragile 10-day ceasefire with Israel has allowed many to return home and bury their dead. And despite the ceasefire, Israeli troops have continued to occupy territory deep in the south of Lebanon. Today, the Israeli military has warned residents to stay away from dozens of villages along the border, publishing for the first time its deployment line inside Lebanese territory. The forward defence line stretches east to west, almost 6 miles into Lebanon. Hezbollah, proscribed by the UK as a terrorist group, has fired hundreds of rockets from southern Lebanon to northern Israel. Our Foreign Affairs correspondent Porrick O'Brien travelled to the southern town of Bazouriye, close to the Litani River. He was only allowed into the area with Hezbollah's permission.
We spent 2 days in southern Lebanon trying to unpack the shorthand that is Hezbollah's stronghold. These are their heartlands. We went to their funerals. We surveyed destroyed neighbourhoods.
This one shell, 5 or 6 meters down.
They may be militarily weak, but for these people with this war, Hezbollah has more reason to exist now, not less. Our first stop, the town of Jibchit. According to the mayor, there were 40 Israeli airstrikes here in the last 6 weeks. When the war started, people left. Now with the fragile ceasefire, they're returning. The mayor is a physics lecturer at a university, but these days constantly fielding calls from concerned residents.
هلا إذا كان في شيء من الأمن والأمان والشمولية فحتما خلال اليومين بتكون نسبة 100% بتصير حتما.
The Israelis said they were targeting Hezbollah militants here, and many of them were killed. But they also hit the generators that were providing electricity to the town and the mosque.
هذا المسجد له حيثية بقلوب أهل البلد.
Hezbollah was born as resistance to Israeli occupation in 1982. It's knitted into the DNA of these places. The mayor says even this repair is part of that resistance. Those bulldozers, people coming back to their houses,
all these are types of resistance.
What are you resisting?
نحن عم نقاوم الفكر الاحتلال، الفكر التوسعي. إسرائيل أصلاً هي كيان غاصب.
We're only allowed into these areas with Hezbollah's permission and oversight. But here we are more free to talk to whoever we want. So we meet sisters-in-law Nahal and Fatima. They stayed here through the 40 strikes.
خوف ما منخاف. نحن أهل الجنوب. ما حدا بيركعنا. هي الحجة كمان كانت صام.
إيه هيدي كل الحرب.
هي كل الحرب.
So how many wars have you stayed here for?
كل الحروب. قديش هي الحروب على لبنان؟
نحن باقيين.
Did this war feel different than all the others?
هيدي أصعب حرب.
بس ما خفنا.
Why?
لأن لأنه بطل عندهم أهداف وكانوا عم يضربوا حيالله حتى مدنيين كيف ما كان حيالله يعني.
These people deeply distrust the Lebanese army's ability to protect them, even more so now. The idea that they could or should disarm Hezbollah, unthinkable. Israel destroyed part of this town. But remember, the townspeople want the destruction of Israel. Hezbollah is a militia that targets civilians in Israel. Hezbollah is a political party with members of parliament and members in the cabinet. Hezbollah is an Iran-backed group with support amongst the Shia community. But Hezbollah is also a movement. It's a frame of mind, which leads you to the question, can you really bomb that out of someone? From Jibchit, we drove south towards the southern swathe of Lebanon where the Israelis are positioned, over the Litani River. The bridge had been bombed by the Israelis, but locals repaired it. And to the coastal city of Sur or Tyre, one of the safer places to get a handle on the geography of this conflict, on pause for now. The Israeli security zone, or occupied area, is delineated by the so-called yellow line. And from here on the coast in Tyre or Sur, you can safely put eyes on it. The yellow line basically runs along the headland there behind me. In between that and the Israeli border, 50+ villages and towns. And one by one, the Israelis are demolishing them. If that sounds familiar, it is. They did exactly the same thing in Gaza. The Israelis say they're dismantling Hezbollah infrastructure, making it impossible for them to fire at the country, thus the sterile buffer zone. Finally, to the town of Bazouriye. Today, the funerals of several people from here who were killed on the 8th of March. They were in Beirut at the time. It is at these funerals that neighbourhoods nail their colours to the mast, and the colour is Hezbollah's yellow. The funerals today include 4 women, 1 teenager and 3 fighters. The thing about it is these communities don't make that distinction. Everyone is a member of the resistance. Some people here did agree to talk to us like Mustafa. Why did Hezbollah get involved? Why did Hezbollah, as some people say, drag this country into war now?
قيادة المقاومة لقت الفرصة المناسبة للرد على هذا الاعتداء وردع العدو الإسرائيلي وقت ما انشغلت إسرائيل بهيدي الحرب الكبيرة.
For him, Israel violated a ceasefire in 2024. The conflict didn't stop then and won't now. The last 6 weeks of war mean the anger and grief are acute here, and Hezbollah will weaponize it. Question is, how do you disarm that?
Porrick O'Brien there. Now, we did ask the Israeli Defence Forces for a comment about the strikes in Jibchit. They did not provide us with a statement. Gresh.
Thanks, Jackie. Well, I've been speaking to the UN's humanitarian chief, Tom Fletcher, for today's forecast. We talked about the humanitarian situation in Sudan, as well as politics closer to home. But we began by talking about Lebanon and the scale of the displacement of people there.
But look, right now, 1 in 5 people in Lebanon is displaced. As I crossed into Damascus a few weeks ago, that week, 200,000 Lebanese people had crossed into Syria. And so the needs are huge. Destruction, displacement, and you've got populations going back now to see if it's safe to go back, and it's not.
So what about the way that war has been conducted? Because in many ways, Israel seemed to be doing in Lebanon what it had done, or learning from what it had done in Gaza.
Well, that's a big concern, is when you hear that same rhetoric being used about reducing Lebanon to rubble. And literally, I mean, Israeli ministers saying, we'll do to you what we did to Gaza. Now, I've been to Gaza twice in the last year and a bit, and I know what that means. And so it's chilling to hear it. But it's part of this wider context of impunity and lawlessness in the world, where you've got some of the most powerful people in the world, the most powerful person in the world, threatening countries, threatening to wipe out civilizations. And we're asking everyone, imploring everyone really, to get back to, it's not sexy, but international humanitarian law.
Israel always says it does respect international law. Does it?
Well, I think a lot of the actions we've seen in both Gaza and Lebanon would not be lawful. And that is ultimately a matter for the courts, the ICC, the ICJ. It needs to be proven. It's not just for me to come along and chuck allegations like that around, but we're seeing all the time the effect of the action.
What did you make of the incident that happened recently in Lebanon, where the ambulance workers were apparently deliberately targeted at least 3 times, where different waves of ambulance corps went to help each other and each one was hit? Now Israel again says ambulances are used to transport Hezbollah weapons. They don't provide evidence for it, but that's what they say. Does that ever become a justification for that kind of attack on ambulance workers?
So there is no justification for hitting ambulances and health workers. Ambulance workers, health workers should never be a target. And it is, it's really disturbing. We know about from elsewhere, the double tap. But now this new lexicon of talking about a treble tap or a quadruple tap, this is part of the context that my colleagues are working in all the time. And we're saying there needs to be accountability.
Sudan is the war that has been pushed out of the way by everything that's happening in the Middle East. Can you contextualize it for us in terms of the need, the numbers of people dying, the numbers of people reliant on food aid?
So you've got 34 million people in need right now, 9 million internally displaced, 4.5 million displaced into neighbors. So you've got that ripple effect of the conflict going through South Sudan, through Chad, for example. And the needs are immense. You've got the massive weaponization of sexual violence against women and girls. Utterly, utterly devastating. It's the worst humanitarian crisis in the world right now.
I mean, just finally, I mean, you're an international diplomat now, but you were, of course, a British diplomat and a British advisor in Downing Street, just as the Foreign Office is in perhaps its biggest crisis of modern times. I mean, do you agree with the assessment of how bad the crisis is in terms of the relationship between the Foreign Office and Number 10?
I spoke personally this morning and immediately got a lot of feedback that my views on the UK political situation were not part of my job, nor that welcome at the moment. So what I would say is I don't think it's in Britain's interest to erect this sort of permanent circular firing squad, which looking in from outside is often the case, certainly has been the case over the last decade or so. I'm watching this current political drama. I know most of the characters.
Ollie Robbins is a friend of
pretty
yours.
well. Yeah, I've known Ollie for a long time, and I've worked with him for many decades. He's a guy of just immense integrity. I'm sad for him that he's lost a job that was actually also a vocation. And I really hope that the UK can get back to looking outwards again. And you know, it can sometimes feel a bit introverted at the moment.
Tom Fletcher, thank you very much indeed.
Thanks, Christian.
And there is a longer version of that interview with Tom Fletcher on the Forecast podcast on YouTube.